Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Melissa Goodstein. I'm the immediate past president of the New York Association of Collaborative Professionals, NYACP. And today I'm continuing my series of collaborative chats with our fantastic collaborative colleagues who are members of NYCP. And today I have the absolute pleasure of meeting with Michelle Lewis. Michelle is an attorney and a partner at the Kozak Law Firm. And her practice is based in Westchester, but in all different counties. But the firm is in White Plains, right, Michelle?
That's right. Although most of my new clients have come from Brooklyn in the last few years. So
Oh,
since the
okay.
pandemic, it's Brooklyn, Manhattan,
Okay, so
it's everywhere.
you have a little bit of a niche practice going there. Okay,
Yes.
with some Brooklynites. And Michelle is very involved with NYCP as being a board member for, I think it's your second term. Or is it your second term as a board member?
Yes, it is my second term, and I started in 2020. I attended my first meeting was the last meeting before the world shut down for COVID.
Oh my God, yes, I do remember that. Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. So you've been a member for a while, a board member for at least 5 years, and you're very also involved with the membership committee and doing some
Yes.
great work with that. So I'm really thrilled
Thank
that
you.
you're joining us, Michelle.
Thanks, Melissa. Thank you for the introduction.
Yeah, so Michelle, tell me a little bit about your family and where you grew up.
Well, I grew up in the Bronx until I was 13 years old in Riverdale from age like 6.
Yeah.
Um, and then when I was 13, my family moved to Long Island, to Great Neck, Long Island, which I didn't like one bit.
Okay.
And I grew up,
How come you didn't like it?
um, it was a very different vibe from Riverdale. Um, Overall, I would say a much more materialistic
Mm,
vibe, a wealthier community. And
yeah,
I felt a lot of pressure to dress a certain way
yeah.
and to have certain things that I never felt when I was growing up in Riverdale.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, but did you graduate? Where did you go to high school then? Did you graduate from high school?
Great Neck South
Oh,
Senior High School.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I graduated high school on Long Island.
Okay. And have you been back to the island or have you,
I
uh,
mean, since I graduated high school, for sure, right? My parents didn't sell their house until I was already I might have even already been a parent. So
wow.
at least until I was in my 20s, maybe even
Yeah,
30.
right. So how did you make your way to collaborative divorce or the divorce area? Can you talk to us a little bit? Because then you went to law school, like after undergrad, and so tell me a
Well,
little bit about the education path that
so
you went.
before the law school, this is where the key is. So
Yeah.
as a child, I was always very like scared of conflict, and in particular scared of nuclear war. And at a really young age, when I was in fact in 6th grade, I was a winner in something called the Peace Essay Contest. And I got to meet Judy Bloom and Madalena Langle at the United Nations with my English teacher
Holy moly.
because of this role. And so this led me to believe that I could change the world, that I could bring about world peace. And that was really always my thing.
Right?
And I studied political science in college, and I got a master's degree actually in international relations before I went to law school. And the reason I went to law school wasn't because I wanted to be a lawyer, but because I wanted to be like the next Boutros Ghali. Like I wanted, or the next Gandhi would have
Wow.
been even better.
Wow.
And so I made my way to family law, kind of going from a macro to a micro mindset. So the mindset was I
Wow.
want to prevent conflict in the world. I want to help heal the world and end conflicts. To I'm really interested in ending conflicts productively in families. And
Wow.
in law school, I did study. I studied mediation and I
Uh-huh.
studied negotiation, and I
Right.
also studied family law as well as divorce mediation. And I did have some
Really?
practice doing divorce mediation as well as like small claims court mediation and
Wow.
teaching as
Wow.
a teaching assistant in the program on negotiation, and teaching mediation to new members of the mediation group there at Harvard.
Wow. Wow. Where did you go to school, Michelle? Where was your training? Where was your education?
Well, for law school, I was at Harvard Law School.
Wow. Wow. And how was that experience for you at Harvard Law School? Was that that's pretty intense.
I guess it was, and I would say it was like the first of my educational experiences where I really was pushed to my intellectual limit
Wow.
and couldn't always get like the A or A plus that I was used to being
Mhm.
able to get just by
Mhm.
my sweat equity. It
Right, right.
was there were people who were smarter than me. There were
Wow, that
classes I couldn't completely ace, and it
right.
was humbling. Not that I wasn't humble, because I think I was always humble, but it was really
It
like
was
up
leveling.
against the limits
Yeah,
of my brain. And so
yeah,
in that way, it was humbling,
good.
to
Wow.
really be with so many brilliant people, many of whom were definitely smarter than I was.
Oh, no, I wouldn't. Yeah, so that's really interesting. But the fact that you had the mediation, that conflict resolution so early on in your
I
career,
did.
that's really amazing. And you've always had the sensibility of going into the peacemaking, area. And that seems like a passion for you that's remained.
Yeah, I think it really came from growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, having Reagan as like just being afraid that there was going to be a nuclear war and wanting to
Wow.
stop it. I think that's where this came from. And
Wow.
then just being really drawn to mediation in law school. And I think Arnold Krabari, I think, is the one who told me about collaborative divorce. When
Really?
I was a mom, um, going through a divorce with three very young children. I hadn't worked in almost 6 years. And I
Wow.
sent out like 250 resumes because I had to get back to work. And Arnold was one of the people who met with me. And I think he's the
Really?
one who told me, who sent me to Neil Kozak and Georgia Kramer with a
Wow.
description of collaborative law, because I was very familiar with mediation,
Right.
but I didn't know about collaborative. And I was immediately intrigued and drawn to,
Wow.
and really went to my firm with the intention of becoming a collaborative attorney and mediator.
That's amazing. And Arnold took the time to kind of, he answered you and told you about this new process in it.
He
That's
did. He
amazing.
did. He invited me to his office, even though he did not have a job for me, and he kind of guided me
That's amazing.
through. Yeah, it
That's
was.
amazing. That's amazing. Wow. And so when you entered it too, did you feel as though that the collaborative process kind of resonated with your sensibility about how you wanted to practice? Can you speak about
Uh,
what for you collaborative, what that means to
yeah. Well, it was like finding a missing puzzle piece for me, because when
you?
I went through my divorce from my husband, um, we used a divorce mediator in the city. And even though I had been trained in divorce mediation and I had a law degree, I found the process very overwhelming. I didn't have a lawyer and didn't have a review attorney, which was a big mistake. And I made some really, really bad mistakes because I was vulnerable. I was scared. I was also 9 months pregnant. That's another story.
Oh my God.
And I made a lot of mistakes. I made decisions that I regretted afterwards, and realized that while I'm still a big believer in divorce mediation, realized that some people are better served by a more
Right.
supportive process. And I would have been much better served by having an attorney, essentially in the room in my corner for those negotiations. And I'm very glad that we never went to court and that we reached an agreement. But
Right.
I think that a collaborative process and an interdisciplinary team would have been so much better.
Mm. Wow.
And so I see collaborative as, like um, the perfect solution for
Mhm.
people for whom there are maybe some red flags in a mediation, but
Right.
still really want to avoid court.
That's right.
So
Well,
I was
also
drawn
having,
to it for that.
yeah, and having that personal, like that background and that experience, I think it really can resonate, because you kind of were in that position. You were on the other side.
I was.
Yeah. And that
I was
really,
very vulnerable. I had three babies, basically a 5-year-old, a 3.5-year-old, and a newborn going through this process. I hadn't worked in 6 years.
wow.
It was scary. It was
Wow.
overwhelming.
Wow.
And it
Wow.
was very trying, and it definitely influenced me tremendously in terms of how I have looked at my career and how I work with my clients and the level of empathy that I feel for them,
Sure.
to be honest. And I will sometimes share a little bits and pieces of my story with clients if I think it will be helpful so
Yeah.
that they know
Right.
that I get it
Right.
and that I've been there.
Right. And you went into a firm, Neil Kozak is one of the founders of NYCP. So
Right.
did you have other mentors along the way to help you kind of reaffirm that you were kind of going in a direction with your career that really um, could help build it and support that? Were there any role models that come to mind and mentors along the way?
I mean, you're one of them. Really, the people who practice mediation and collaborative, and especially the people who have managed to do that without litigating, are really my role models. So, Catherine Miller is one. You are
Right.
another one. Deb Wayne is another one.
Yeah, yeah,
Really, I'm inspired uh,
yeah,
by the people who have said, this is who I am. These are my values.
yeah,
This is what I'm going to do. And it took me a long time before I
yeah.
was able to stop litigating completely, because I had enough of a practice and I had the courage, frankly, to say, I'm
Mm-hmm.
just not willing to do this anymore. I'm not going to engage in
Wow.
this process anymore. And that really wasn't until the end of 2022 that I stopped
Wow.
completely litigating.
Wow. Wow. That's really, thanks for sharing that. And, in your years, because you've been in practice for a while. I mean, you went back and so you've been in practice. How long has it been for you?
Well, I became a member of the bar in 98. I graduated law school in 97.
Okay.
I had a clerkship. I became a member of the bar in 1998. So I
Mm-hmm.
practiced for a couple years, 98 to the middle of 2000. And then I was a stay-at-home mom for several years. And
Right.
then I started at my current firm, well, at the previous iteration of my
Yeah.
current firm in May of 2006. So it'll be
Wow.
19 years a couple months from
Wow.
now. So it's almost about
Wow.
19 years
Wow. That's a long time.
of
And
just family law, I should.
that's right.
Yeah,
So in this area, is there some, resolving and, you've litigated, but now you're kind of transitioning more in reaching agreements. Is there like a tip like that comes to mind that if somebody were going through a divorce and just in hindsight, if you can just kind of say, be mindful of this for a better outcome. Is there a tip that comes to mind?
I in terms of a tip, I thought about this because I prepared,
Yeah. Yeah.
but the tip wasn't for a better outcome, but more for a better process and
Mm,
increasing the chances of having a good outcome. And that tip really was try to focus on the future.
mm,
Try to not focus on what happened and whose fault it is, but to focus on what's next and how can we make our family okay, right? How can we
yeah.
make sure that we're both okay and our kids, if there are any, are okay?
Yeah. What you hoped for,
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great
When
tip.
people get bogged down in the past, it can create a lot of
Oh,
obstacles
it
to the
can.
future. And ideally, they're able to put that aside to try to build the next stage of their family.
Yeah, to get unstuck, because that's always like really hard.
Yeah,
I agree. And I do think process choice is a big decision on
for sure.
how you navigate that for sure. And the work that we do is so hard, Michelle. It is hard getting in and being in the thick of conflict and day in and day out. Our days are long. They don't just end at 5 o'clock. They kind of
Yeah.
spill over many times, you're up at night thinking about things on the weekends. What do you do to kind of de-stress or help you stay focused and present for your clients? Because there's a lot of trauma that we're here, that we're
True.
we're taking in. And you need to be clear and focused and provide this like compass on we're going to be able to move forward to help them.
Yeah. I mean, for myself, my self-care, if that's what you're kind of getting
Yeah,
at, is, I try to exercise every morning.
yeah,
I do yoga, I run,
that's great.
I bike on my Peloton, I lift weights, and when the
That's great.
weather's not brutally cold, I
Right.
spend a lot of time outside. I love to
That's
hike.
good.
I love
Oh, that's
kayaking,
wow.
just taking long walks, biking. So I'm really very, physically active, and that helps me a lot. Um, I would say
That's
that's
great.
really the biggest thing that I do, and to some extent, reading. although reading the news is not relaxing these days. So
Yeah, so that's a little rough. Is
my
there,
audiobooks, I guess.
yeah, do you watch any, what's like your favorite thing that you're streaming now? Do you watch,
So I'm streaming nothing unless, I mean, so I was trying to work through what streaming meant. And I decided that that was limited to downloading things on my phone that I would watch. And so the
oh,
answer to that is nothing, if that's what you mean by streaming.
well, I mean, do you watch like any series like Apple TV or Netflix
Oh,
stuff?
Netflix, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
Netflix. I just watched a kind of, I watched a fun Turkish drama. That's my most recent thing I watched.
Well, that's interesting. A fun Turkish drama.
A fun
Wow.
Turkish
Okay.
drama.
Okay. But that's a nice escapism. So you
Yeah.
balance and you take time for yourself and
I
have
I
some off duty.
try. I
Yeah.
try. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of nights I don't come in to relax until 10 or 10:30 at night.
Yeah. I
So
know.
my relaxing is about 15 minutes long before bed. And
Right.
most weekends involve,
Right.
working some part of one or
Right.
both days.
Right.
So
Right.
I wouldn't say it's a balance, but it's an attempt at balance and hopefully getting better all the time.
Yeah, well, that's all we can do. And it shows how committed you are to your clients too. It's hard to just kind of, they're going through probably one of the, and as you know, I mean, you went through this yourself, how
It's
difficult a time it is, and to be present and available and support them takes a lot. And they need that support. And it sounds like you're incredibly empathetic and there for them in a really supportive way.
Thank you. I mean, I find it honestly easier to respond to my clients than to not respond, if that makes any sense. Like if
Mm,
someone's emailing me on a weekend, until I've sat down and responded to them, I
that's
don't
so
feel right.
interesting.
Like
That's
I'm
really
carrying it
interesting.
with me.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
That makes sense. So in terms of do you cook at all? Do
I
you enjoy
do.
cooking? And what's the
I
last
do. I
dish?
do. That's one of my big ambitions for the next phase of my life, like when I
Is
slow down professionally, is to expand my repertoire and
okay.
experiment with baking, which is something I've done zero of. I think you're a baker, right?
I do enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's nice creative outlet. I enjoy that's my food is my love language. So I just like cooking for people and
Yeah.
it's
I think it's
really
my love language too, but I only know like 12 words. So they just
that's
keep
okay if they're
repeating.
really good words. If
I
they're really good words.
love
It'll get you through. That's all you need is some really good ones. So what's your best word? What is it? What's your signature
you.
dish?
I don't know if I have a signature dish, but I did years ago for sure. But I haven't
Yeah.
made it in a while. And that was roast duck stuffed with sauerkraut with green. It's a Russian recipe with
Wow.
cut up green apples around the side.
Wow, how interesting. Wow.
And
Duck
yeah,
is difficult to do. That's a difficult thing to cook.
not it wasn't. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if I could even do it anymore because it's been a while, but for about 20 years, that was my signature dish. If I was
Wow.
going to make something
That was it.
big. Right.
Wow.
And then it moved like during the pandemic, I did a lot of experimenting and cooking, and then it moved to making some quiches, and now I make a lot of roasted vegetables, which is nice. And
Yeah, that
but
is nice.
I don't have like one dish anymore, like one
You
signature.
don't have it. Okay. All
No.
right. Well, maybe but is there a dish that you're like they say, "Oh, mom, can you make this?" Or, is there some
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's not every person in my family definitely like requests the same dish,
Okay,
but
okay.
my chicken cutlets are requested a lot.
Okay. Okay.
Um, One of my kids really likes my turkey meatloaf, but
Okay.
it's
Right. Okay.
not one
Okay.
thing.
So those are some of those words, right? Your 12
Yeah.
words.
And my
Okay.
favorite is the salmon because like
Is the
almost
salmon?
everyone deserves to have salmon in it.
Okay, good. All right. Well, maybe if we get a cookbook together, maybe you'll share one of your dishes
One of
that
my
you
12 recipes.
one of your 12 one of your 12 the most impactful word that you could come up with that is
Okay.
your signature. Yeah, because it's a nice outlet, right? Cooking and taking care and nurturing, and it's all,
Yeah,
it's really an extension of what we're doing in our service of
right.
what our profession is.
Right. It's also a
Taking care.
challenge too. Like it's a struggle to kind of think ahead. I find oftentimes if I follow a recipe without going a few steps ahead, I get stuck going, wait, I wasn't supposed to mix those things yet. Oh my God, I should have
Right.
read ahead in the recipe. And so
Yeah,
it's an art and I'm
it
learning.
is an art. Yeah, it is an art. I do better without recipes. I like just creating and just,
Mm,
getting ingredients together and just kind of
Wow.
putting things and just when I go with a recipe, somehow like I do forget, I get too focused and I forget a step. I like to do it
Right.
more like get inspired, use something as a base and then make it my own. But that's
Yeah.
just everyone.
I think that's because you're an advanced chef. I think if you're at the more basic level, you wouldn't be comfortable just winging
Oh,
it. So,
maybe self-proclaimed. I have no idea, but I just like messing up
yeah.
in the kitchen and it's fun. Anyway, so in terms of going back to collaborative and the NYCP in particular, is there like a memorable event that comes to mind or an experience that you had with NYCP that you wanted to share?
Yeah, it was really thinking about this before our chat. It was hard to pick one thing, but I did want to share one, which is
Okay.
I think it was perhaps the first event at Randy Heller's event space in her
Yes.
building
Yes.
when I hadn't seen a lot of people in a year or two because of the pandemic.
Oh,
And we
yeah.
had, it might have been a meet and greet with another organization or something, but I just remember how joyful it was to
Yeah.
see so many faces that I hadn't seen in a year or
Yeah.
2 years or more. Like I feel like it had to be over the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it felt like coming home. It felt like a family reunion. And I felt so, I just felt so good. And I'm like a pretty shy person. I'm not really comfortable in a party situation. And so
Right.
often when I'm in a crowd or a party or a celebration, if I don't know everyone there or a lot of people, I'm very uncomfortable and shy and awkward, and I'd rather run away. And this was just like, wow, I'm in a social situation and I belong here. I belong here. And it was
Yeah.
just for me, that's not everywhere. I don't go to every party
Yeah.
and feel like
Yeah.
I belong.
Yeah.
But I felt like, wow, I really belong here. Like I'm really part of this group. And it was so nice. And that was
Yeah.
that was memorable for me.
Yeah, I can appreciate that because
Yeah.
I
I
think
thought
we've
you might.
spoken about that because I also am very shy and
I
going into
know.
it, but it is a comfortable space where you're with really like-minded professionals who really share the same, the same value, the same service that you're trying to offer, and that commonality and that connection
That's
is
right. And
nice.
there's
It's a
just
nice connection. It's a nice
there's a lot
comfort.
of trust, right? There's
Yes,
trust and there's generosity, kindness toward one another, and shared values, right? we're
that's
all
right.
we're
Yeah.
all heading to the same, we all share the same goal.
Yeah, yeah. And that's really unique. You don't get that in across disciplines, right? It's,
And across
attorneys,
disciplines, yeah.
financial, mental health, just to be all in that same space
Yeah,
is really powerful. Well, thanks for
it
sharing
is.
that. Um, in terms of your career ahead, if you were to tell yourself like how to prepare, because you're kind of
Mm.
at the midpoint or towards, you're 20 years in more, right? Is there
Yeah.
something that you would tell your younger self to help prepare for the career ahead?
Well, I mean, if I had to tell my younger self something that I probably still have to tell myself, it would be to learn how to compartmentalize and not not take every case to heart, not feel like I'm personally responsible for the life and future of all of my clients. Because that's
That's
one of my struggles is I do get really emotionally
yeah,
involved, I guess. So
right.
I would tell my younger self to figure out a way to be a
Yeah,
compassionate professional while also carving out a separate mental
yeah,
and emotional space where I'm not impacted by what's going on in all my clients' lives at the same time.
that's excellent. I really like that, Michelle, because that's hard. I struggle with that
Yeah.
too, but I think with experience, that's what it comes to, because it can get very overwhelming and consuming. And
Yeah,
then
and I think having like one of the things I've noticed because most of the partners that I've had, mostly with one exception, have never been divorced, and they are more successful than I am at compartmentalizing. And I realized, I think, that part of the reason why I empathize so much with my clients, but also worry about them, is that I identify so closely, right? It's a shared experience.
that's
And
right.
so it brings up the feelings that I had when I was going through that process, the fear,
Right.
like
Yeah,
mostly the fear and the anger.
right.
And so
Right.
I go right into it with them,
Right. Right. And on one
and I
hand,
feel it.
Yeah, and on one hand, it's a really nice thing to have gone through it because you can
Yes,
really have a lens that you're looking at, which is something like I don't have that lens. I
right.
can't look at it from that way. So it's I yeah, that's a really great point. So I'd like to end, Michelle, with like thinking about like where do you hope to be in 10 years and what do you hope collaborative practice to be in 10 years?
Well, in 10 years, I'd like to be opening up my next chapter of my life, I think, and kind of working on my bucket list. I don't know if that's completely to the exclusion of practicing law. I'm not sure yet, but I definitely want to focus on traveling the world, on cooking more, on my
Right.
creative endeavors that I kind of put to the side. Like I used to write poetry and I used to make
Wow.
art. And I really dropped that, not just because of practicing law, but just being a mom of 3 kids.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I love to go back in and start exploring some of that side of myself again.
That's
Uh,
amazing.
so
Tapping into
yeah, so
that.
personally, that's what I hope in 10 years to kind of turn the page a little bit.
Hmm.
But for collaborative, that's easy.
Hmm.
I want it to be the default process of how
Hmm.
people get divorced, rather than the default being we suit up and we hire litigators and we go to
Hmm.
court. I think that collaborative to me offers just the right amount of support and expertise for the majority of families. I think some people may still need to litigate. They always will. They just will never agree. And they need eventually a third party to decide, or, where there's domestic abuse or severe illness or addiction, sometimes it has to be that way. I think mediation is great for certain relationships that have some level of trust and some level of power, not power imbalance, but power balance to them, where both people are fairly confident that they can trust the other person's disclosures and they can
Hmm.
stand up for themselves and negotiate on equal footing. And I
Right.
think for that big middle group of people, which I'm going to say
Yeah.
is 70%, I'm going to say 15% should mediate, 15% should
Yeah.
litigate, 70% should do collaborative law.
Wow.
That's kind of how I look at it in terms of the
Yeah.
the right level of support.
Yeah. Well, it certainly offers all of that professional support in a unique way in a process that I don't think any other process delivers. Really.
No,
It doesn't. And that's what sets it apart. And I think as a preferred choice, as the process choice, I think that's a worthy goal and hopefully that'll come. It'll
yeah,
come. Things are slow.
working
Change
on
if
it.
change happens. Yeah, we're all working on it and you're doing your part in an amazing way. Really appreciate all the work that you're doing in the field. Your commitment to our board and the organization is we really have a lot of appreciation for that.
Thank you. Same here for your commitment.
Thank you. So Michelle, if people want to find you, you're on the NYCP website. They can find you on the COSAC
Yeah.
firm's website and
I mean,
it
if I'm
has all your
allowed to, I'll
content.
give my email address.
We
You
know
tell
where to
me.
find you. It's all there. It's all there
All
though.
right.
Yeah,
Okay, yes,
yeah,
I am on the website and I'm at
yeah,
Kozek PLLC.
yeah, great. Well, listen, this has been an absolute pleasure to speak with you and to
Same
learn a
here,
little bit
Melissa. It's
more
always a
about
pleasure
you.
to speak with you.
And thank you so much for your time and
And thank
hope to
you.
see you soon.
All right. Happy
Thanks.
Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. For